Welcome to Soul Trek. This week's episode, Sardines. Well, to tell you the truth, Sardines might be a rather peculiar title for one of the Soul Trek episodes. This isn't about trying to pack people into churches like sardines or anything like that. This actually stems from a conversation I overheard a couple of weeks ago. And as you know, hearing things is an involuntary thing. I mean, sometimes you can choose to try to not to listen in on somebody else's conversation. But I overheard this in a restaurant recently. I wasn't trying to hear it or anything like that. It was just one of those voices that kind of carried through the restaurant. A woman sitting at table with some of her friends, I presume, asked the following question. Exactly what kind of fish do they make sardines out of? Well, as you can imagine, it took a lot of effort on my part not to laugh out loud at that. And I told Teresa, I said, I'll tell you later why I'm trying to stifle a laugh. And I did. And of course, by the time I got around to telling the story, I realized that we all have things like that we don't know about. There's popular videos, you know, I was this many years old before I realized, and then they show you something that you thought everybody knew. So yeah, if you had no reason to even think about it before, you'd wonder whether or not a sardine was made from a particular kind of fish and not being a fish unto itself. And it occurred to me that really the church is, or can be like that as well. We have our own kind of language, our own kind of way of talking about things, and some of it's very ancient ways of talking about a lot of things. Some of the words we don't use anymore, some of the words we don't use in that way anymore, and it's awfully easy for people to get confused about what the church teaches about one thing or another, because words change meaning or they fall out of use. And yet in the church we still use those words in a former meaning or that aren't being used anymore. So the church really should be a safe place where we ask those kinds of questions, something that I suppose others might think are quite obvious answers, and some things maybe not so much. But it really should be a safe place. And I don't think in the church world I find myself trying to stifle a laugh because somebody has asked a question that should be pretty obvious, because they're not obvious. I used to run a program. It wasn't really a program, but it was once a month. I think on a Wednesday evening I'd invite people into the church in my former parish, and we had an event called Stump the Rector. And the idea was people would come with their questions. Now, some people took it to heart that they were actually trying to stump me on things. That wasn't really the purpose. The purpose was for people to come with their genuine questions about things that they didn't understand or that they'd forgotten or whatever. So the church really ought to be a place where we can ask those questions. And if someone asks us a question we don't know the answer to, we just say, I'll find out the answer. We'll go ask the rector, and if he doesn't know, he's got a whole bunch of books on his shelves, one of which must have the answer to that particular question. So, there may be questions that people have and they want to ask. And so I'm inviting people to ask those questions. I'm inviting the people of St. Paul's Church to ask me those questions. I'm inviting people of their own particular church, wherever church you happen to go to ask your rector or pastor those particular questions. If you don't belong to a church, look one up in the phone book or online or whatever, and give them a call and ask them whatever questions seem to be burning in your heart and mind, and ask those questions. I remember just before the Super Bowl one time I was watching, this was many years ago, I was watching with a group of friends, and one of the people asked, just before the game started, knowing that the first quarter was about to start, she asked how many quarters there were in a football game. And I have to say that she started laughing at her own question before she fully finished it, realizing that whatever has a quarter, whatever can be divided into quarters only has 4 of them. That's what the word quarter means, of course. So yeah, I mean, we can still have a bit of fun with the kinds of questions that come to our mind. I haven't shared with you in this video all of the stupid questions that I've had in my head all these years, some of which I've asked and some of which I've been laughed at. The real point is that because of some of the archaic language used in the church, people have real questions. And this is a really important realization that for the Anglican Church anyway, there are no secrets. There's nothing that we do that's done in secret. There's nothing that we do that we can't try and explain to one another what that means or the significance of that for us. So there's no questions that are out of bounds. There might be questions we don't have the answers to. There might be some things we attribute to mystery, but there's no questions that are out of bounds. There's nothing in our faith group that is a secret. So that's my hope for all of us today, that we are big and bold enough to ask those questions that are burning in our hearts, and that those that hear those questions don't have to stifle a laugh, but do their best to try and answer those questions. Thank you.